National Catholic Register. This is Register Radio, bringing light and clarity to the news and topics that affect your life.
St. Peter's Basilica in Rome receives an estimated 10 million visitors every year. Yet there are so many people who have yet to pass into that magnificent space. Now the Vatican has teamed up with Microsoft to make a spectacular virtual visit possible. Catholic News Agency's Courtney Mares brings us the story. Then we turn to another Catholic sacred space and international cultural icon, Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris, which is about to reopen to the public 5 years after fire destroyed its roof and spire. The Register's Solene Tadie shares with us some little-known facts about this great cathedral of world renown. I'm Jeanette DeMello, host of Register Radio, together with Matthew Bunson, my co-host, and EWTN's Vice President and Editorial Director. Hello, Matthew.
Hello, great to be with you. Well, as you know, the Vatican and nearly all of Rome are working rather feverishly to complete construction and the various renovation projects in preparation for the Jubilee, which is going to be a monumental event. 30 million visitors are expected to come. Artificial intelligence, though, is also helping to make some of the treasures of the church available to everyone wherever they might be around the world. And Catholic News Agency's Vatican correspondent Courtney Mares has reported on a new collaboration between Microsoft and the Vatican to bring St. Peter's Basilica to them, again, wherever you are in the world. So, Courtney, welcome.
Thank you, Matthew. It's great to be here.
Courtney, this virtual creation, it's really quite amazing. It's been called the digital twin of St. Peter's Basilica. What does that entail?
Yes, so the Vatican and Microsoft collaborated to use AI to create a 3D digital model of St. Peter's Basilica, which is being called a digital twin. And this can be accessed worldwide for free online, anywhere. Now, not only does it allow you to see the incredible art in the Basilica up close in high resolution, like some of the details in the upper heights inside the cupola or on the baldacchino designed by Bernini, but it's also very educational. And the website takes visitors through the story of St. Peter, connecting it with art in the Basilica, depicting the life of St. Peter, as well as the history of the Basilica itself, which is brought to life through AI imaging. It's really impressive, and it's being utilized in multiple different ways, including most importantly, this online model that can be accessed by anyone. But there's also an in-person exhibit that will be launching for the Jubilee year at the Basilica.
I can't wait to get into that one. But hold off a second here. I want to know how is this even possible? How is this imaging, this digital 3D model? How is that even possible? What made this work?
Yeah, it's really interesting how it was made. The Microsoft team flew drones inside of St. Peter's Basilica when it was empty, and these drones took 400,000 high-resolution images using advanced photogrammetry techniques. And then with all this data from these 400,000 photographs was fed into artificial intelligence, which was able to help process all of this data and use it to create the model or digital twin. Microsoft's president, Brent Smith, was here for the launch of the model, and he described it as one of the most technologically advanced and sophisticated projects of its kind. And one interesting fact about it, digital twins are commonly used in the manufacturing imagery. So you might have a digital counterpart of a factory that can allow you to see where a piece of machinery in this massive factory might be broken. And likewise, this virtual model is being used by the Vatican to help with art preservation of the Basilica. It's allowed us to be able to see where small, mosaics up high in the cupola might be missing a tile or previously undetected cracks in the Basilica that can help preserve it for future generations.
I find that part of it completely fascinating, that this is really enabling them in preservation, and yet it's so futuristic, right? I mean, that's what's so strange about this kind of project is it's using the best of technology, but in preservation work. So that was really a neat aspect of it for me. Courtney, you've spent a little time on this because you wrote about it for the Register. So you've spent time on the website that allows you to enter this virtual space. You went to a press conference. What's been most impressive to you about this endeavor?
I think that one of the most interesting aspects of the online digital model is really that it does provide the opportunity for people who might never have a chance to travel to Rome or visit the Vatican. You know, it gives them a way to see and experience St. Peter's Basilica up close. And I must add that, you know, over my years of living in Rome, I've visited St. Peter's, I've had the privilege of visiting St. Peter's Basilica hundreds of times in person. And I personally found the online model to be full of interesting historical facts, and it allowed me to see, up close, magnificent artwork that when you're there physically, you just can't get that close to, either because it's so high up on the ceiling or down below in the crypt, some of the ancient mosaics near St. Peter's tomb. And you can really learn a lot from this online resource. And I think it's just great that going into our Jubilee year, starting in December, this website can give Catholics a chance to make a digital pilgrimage to the tomb of St. Peter online, even if you're not able to come on a pilgrimage to Rome during this Jubilee.
Yeah, Courtney, in 2026, we're celebrating the 400th anniversary of the current structure, but sometimes people forget that this isn't the first St. Peter's Basilica, is it? And what is AI going to allow us to see of what I know is generally called Old St. Peter's?
That's right. The current basilica that you visit today when you come to the Vatican is the Baroque basilica that was built over the course of the 16th and 17th centuries. But the history of the site where the basilica was built goes back all the way back to the crucifixion of St. Peter upside down on Vatican Hill. And I think one of the most educational parts of the virtual model is that it takes you through this ancient history, beginning with Caligula's first century construction of a circus on Vatican Hill and the placement of an Egyptian obelisk at its center. Now, this obelisk is, seen today in St. Peter's Square, is the same obelisk that's witnessed centuries of history, from Rome's bloody persecution of Christians to the tomb of St. Peter becoming a major pilgrimage site. So I think, anyone, whether you're visiting St. Peter in visiting the Basilica in the upcoming Jubilee or making a virtual pilgrimage, keep that in mind next time you see St. Peter's Basilica obelisk.
Right.
It's amazing. What you were mentioning, Matthew, was what's frequently referred to as the old St. Peter's Basilica, is the basilica that was legalized, what was constructed at the request of Constantine when he legalized Christianity in the 4th century. Now, being a bit of a history nerd, it's always been a dream of mine to see inside of the old St. Peter's Basilica, what would it be like? And actually, when I first heard that Microsoft was doing an AI-enhanced visit to the Basilica, I made a comment to someone like, what I really want to see is AI do a visit to the old St. Peter's Basilica. And then I was blown away that is, in fact, what they've brought us.
It is AI, so somebody heard you. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, maybe that is it. But I think a lot more work went into it before that.
It's beautiful, Courtney.
Yeah, and that's something you really get to see in particular in the in-person exhibit, which I'll tell you more about later.
Yeah, please tell us about it, though.
Oh, okay. It immerses visitors in what it would have been like to visit the Basilica in the 4th century, but also as the Basilica evolved, so also as a medieval pilgrim as well. So the in-person exhibit is called Petros Ani, which is Greek for Peter is here, and it's taken from writing that excavators and archaeologists found near the tomb of St. Peter. This writing in Greek that says Peter is here. And I actually got a sneak peek of this in-person exhibit, which hasn't opened yet, but it will open for the Jubilee year, and I was very impressed. It starts up on the terrace of St. Peter's Basilica, behind the dome, designed by Michelangelo, and then continues in these previously unvisited upper passageways of the basilica And if you actually can look down and see the altar of St. Michael below inside the basilica. But it includes these two round theaters that give you this immersive experience of the basilica throughout the centuries. And let me tell you, it was just a beautiful and enriching experience.
It's really fascinating. I wish I could do this in-person one, but I think I will definitely be doing the virtual one. And I want to give people a chance to go there to visit this virtual site. It's found at virtual.basilicasanpietro.va. And if that's too much for you right now, just go to ncregister.com and you can find Courtney Mares' article. It's entitled A New Kind of Pilgrimage. AI Takes You Inside St. Peter's Basilica. That's found at ncregister.com. And it's also in our print edition of the National Catholic Register with the same headline. And it's the page one feature. It's just beautiful with lots of images and everything. Courtney, I think this is a tremendous opportunity. There's even something for kids, which my kids would love. It's Minecraft. St. Peter's Basilica. You can explore it through Minecraft, which is fun for gamers. So there's really a lot here for anyone who has visited St. Peter's or has never visited St. Peter's, and I think it's a great opportunity for all. One last question. This has got to be brief, but the Vatican sure is using a lot of AI these days, Courtney. Do you know why that is?
Yeah, the Vatican, the Catholic Church, for being the oldest institution in the world, has taken quite more interest in AI than one might expect. But in particular, the Vatican's been a leading voice in artificial intelligence ethics. We saw, years before the release of ChatGPT, the Vatican was hosting multiple high-level discussions with scientists and tech executives on AI ethics. The Pontifical Academy of Life has issued a document called the Rome Call on the ethical use of AI. Mm-hmm. And then Pope Francis himself actually became the first pope to address the G7 summit when he was invited to speak about AI ethics in June. And there he underlined that no machine should ever choose to take the life of a human being. So you see, once again, the Catholic Church speaking to society today and being an important voice for ethics in, even the newest of technologies.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Courtney, for highlighting the old and the new about the Vatican. You've been listening to Register Radio on EWTN. When we come back, we'll be joined by Solene Tadie, who brings us a report about Notre Dame Cathedral's reopening. Stay tuned to Register Radio on EWTN.
Let's return to Register Radio on EWTN.
Welcome back. I'm Jeanette DeMello, host of Register Radio. I'm together with Matthew Bunson, EWTN News' Vice President and Editorial Director. On December 8th, Paris's Archbishop Laurent Ulrich, accompanied by the French President Emmanuel Macron, will open the historic landmark Notre Dame Cathedral, which has been closed to public worship since 2019. Solene Tadie, the Register's Europe correspondent who grew up in Paris, joins us now to discuss the importance of Notre Dame's cathedral. Solene, since we're looking forward to this beautiful event of a reopening, let's remember for a moment the tragic day 5 years ago. Can you describe what happened that day?
Absolutely, Jeanette. Yes, it was a major event in the recent history of France and also, I believe, for the world. I was in Paris that day and I flew back to Rome on that very day. No one will forget what they were doing on that day. Like for every big event like that, it was right after Palm Sunday, April 15, on the eve of the Holy Week leading up to Easter. So passers-by were helplessly watching the orange flames rising from the roof above the rose window of the cathedral. Many people stopped there crying, praying, singing to ask God's mercy. There was something really apocalyptic about it. Everyone had in mind the Bible verse from the gospel of that day. That was, my God, why have you forsaken me? And that was really something everyone had on their mind. So it has caused a kind of awakening about the importance of our Catholic heritage. So somehow it was a huge shock, but it was also a wake-up call, I would say.
Yeah, Solene, there seemed to have been, there was the immense trauma surrounding the actual fire itself. But then over these last years, there has been a kind of trauma accompanying the rebuilding. A lot of tensions, a lot of frustrations, and it seems as though some of the drama of laïcité has played out. Can you talk a little bit about that, the difficulties of getting Notre Dame rebuilt in a way that is authentically Catholic?
Yes, it has been a whole roller coaster ride the whole time, as President Emmanuel Macron wanted from the first day. He claimed that he wanted to achieve what he called contemporary architectural gesture, especially for the loved spire designed by the famous 19th century architect Viollet-le-Duc, in harmony with the cathedral's Gothic style. So it was a much beloved feature of the cathedral, and Emmanuel Macron, since it was destroyed completely in the fire together with the roof, he said, well, we will rebuild it. Then it gave rise to the most crazy ideas, and it was something quite scary for a lot of people. I had the occasion to report on that many times for the Register. I had fun, I must say, but it was also very difficult sometimes. It was very scary. There was therefore, this big outcry against this project, notably in the Senate, but also among associations of experts, heritage defenders. They wanted the spire and roof, so destroyed in the fire, to be rebuilt exactly as it was. And eventually they won their case by legal means. So it was eventually rebuilt as it was. But Emmanuel Macron remained really disappointed after that. So he tried with another thing. So there is another ongoing controversy, this time surrounding the 6 contemporary stained glass windows that were also designed by Viollet-le-Duc. And the French president announced last year that he would replace these glass windows that remained completely intact in the fire. So a lot of associations didn't understand why the state, the government, would interfere with the architecture of the church to promote something contemporary. They just didn't understand. So there is still, this kind of tug of war between the government and Heritage Association. And this time, unfortunately, there's a good chance the government will win the case. It was a kind of revenge of those willing to do something, modern, contemporary. And I'm afraid we will lose these 6 intact windows that will be probably, in that case, exhibited somewhere else in Paris.
Yeah, and it's a tragedy that the church seems to have very little say in this. So what exactly is going to be different, and what will be the same in Notre Dame?
So the church had its says concerning the internal parts, so the furnishings, because yes, the state owns the cathedral by virtue of the law of separation between the state and the church, dating from the beginning of the 20th century. But the diocese has its say on the internal furnishings, for instance, and so they chose that the internal furnishings, and they also have triggered their share of controversy. We've published also a number of pictures on the Register about the new interior design that is also generally very modern. And so somehow people didn't really understand why this time the diocese had a choice, and they chose also to do something extremely contemporary. So you will see that the benches, that the chairs are very modern, the altar, they changed pretty much everything. And so eventually the structure of the cathedral, everything was rebuilt as it was, you will see, but the interior design will be quite different. There is also a new reliquary shrine that I must say is quite beautiful and impressive. It's new, it's quite modern, but really beautiful. It is located in the axial chapel, and it will be the new home for the cathedral's most important relics. That is the crown of thorns, of course, a fragment of the wood of the cross, and a nail from Christ's Passion. And finally, there is also a new space called Espace Notre Dame that has been set up under the forecourt of the Maison du Chantier des Métiers, which opened already in 2023. So now it's opening to the public. And it features original videos, works of art, relics, everything around Notre Dame and its history.
Solene, you grew up in Paris. Is there a space, a place inside of Notre Dame that you're looking forward to visiting again?
I might not be very original in that, and everything is unique in Notre Dame, but maybe, this stone statue, like the Virgin Mary, La Vierge à l'Enfant, it's my absolute favorite thing. It's such a high model of Gothic elegance. It was built in the early 14th century. And it providentially remained intact in the fire as well. I don't know if you remember this image that went around the world, with the large cross and the altar that also remained intact, and they were standing alone among the wreckage after the fire in 2019. And so was also that statue. And it was beloved by many great authors in France. And you have, for instance, these famous poets that we have, Paul Claudel, a wonderful French poet, and he converted there. He had a very sudden conversion there next to the statue. So for me, it's a very high symbol, and I think no one should miss that.
Of course, and this is Our Lady's Cathedral, so that's very fitting. I want to turn to your article at ncregister.com, and it was also published in the National Catholic Register's print edition in December 1st. And this is about the 8 little-known facts about Notre Dame. And Solene, some of these facts relate to this place's history. This is not simply a sacred space for France, for Paris, but really for the world. What took place there that we should know about?
Yes, so of course, for us Catholics, what really matters is that King St. Louis brought the Holy Crown of Thorns there in 1239. But, it was also the place of a lot of secular events, and people tend to forget that. And I would say for the worse and better, because we had something quite neutral. The very first Estates General in history that was a kind of parliament at the beginning of the 14th century, gathering all 3 orders of the Kingdom of France, and it was a complete first in history. And the cathedral was not even completely achieved. It was not entirely built. So it was something huge. King Philippe le Bel gathered all these orders there, so it was something huge before the time. And then during, of course, the chapter of the French Revolution, that was a very sad chapter for the French Church and for Catholicism in general. The cathedral was transformed into a temple of reason, and they practiced there the cult of the being, and so it was completely then the cathedral was completely get out of the cult, so no masses were celebrated there for many years. And it was eventually, it fell into oblivion. It was completely damaged. No one thought about it. They even, put some wines there, it was the warehouse for this wine barrel. It was really something. It's just not only then Napoleon was crowned an emperor there, and that's only at that moment that Napoleon could commission some restoration work inside the cathedral. And then it's Victor Hugo, the great author, that wrote the famous book Notre Dame de Paris, and it really brought the cathedral back from this brink of oblivion. And one last thing. So yes, I mentioned that before, of course, the conversion of Paul Claudel, but one thing that is very important, that many people forgot that it was a huge symbol of the liberation of Paris at the end of World War II. So it's really something that with which a lot of American people can relate, because Charles de Gaulle, after the liberation, when the German occupation troops surrendered, thanks to the American mostly, Charles de Gaulle, he marched along the Champs-Élysées, surrounded by the crowd, and there were also a lot of American soldiers and all, and so he went directly straight to the cathedral, and there were the bells ringing out, announcing the liberation, and they sang a Magnificat, and it's really something that remains engraved in the collective memory. Charles de Gaulle himself mentioned it in his Mémoire de Guerre, this famous Magnificat that rose. He said the Magnificat rose under the roof of the cathedral, was ever more ardent once sung. So it's really something that people should remember, and it's a beautiful event.
And one last question, Solene. I know that Notre Dame has such deep meaning for you. What are you looking forward to seeing again?
Probably, although it was not destroyed in the fire, of course, I was really missing this beautiful statue, the Virgin of Paris. So that remains my favorite place, my favorite feature of the cathedral. But I'm very curious, to see this reliquary that I mentioned, this new interior design, because although it's a bit too modern in some respect, so I'm very curious.
Yes, Solene, that makes a lot of sense too. I mean, it's something new and it's something old, very old, and so it is a good idea, I think, for us to keep that in mind as we explore it, and who may be attracted to what is new in this very old cathedral, and that hearts can still be touched in this way. So we're so grateful that it is finally opening. EWTN is going to be covering the opening of Notre Dame, and we will have articles at ncregister.com by Solene and others, but you can also find EWTN's coverage on the EWTN app. You can click news and look especially for EWTN in depth to find the stories that they publish, that they produce there. Solene, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Remember, for more news, analysis, and commentary, check out the National Catholic Register online at ncregister.com. Thanks for joining us here on Register Radio on EWTN. Until next week, on behalf of my producer, Michael McCall, my co-host, Matthew Bunson, and myself, Jeanette DeMello, I pray that God bless you.